Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tech and Tactile podcast. My name's Cody, and as always, I'm joined with Michael.
Hello, hello.
And today, I had an episode that was near and dear to my heart that I just more or less I don't know how to describe this. It's not a rant, it's more like a love, an ode. It's just an overall PSA about emulation. Yes, it's a topic that some people find sacrilege. It's just a little bit sacrilege. But, for someone like me, emulation quite literally opened the doors to a lot of video games that were not really accessible to me. And I'd love to get into it and talk about it. If you got a PC that's capable or a handheld device or anything like that, and you're just modern gaming just isn't really doing it for you, then I could not recommend emulation enough to any of you who don't know what emulation is. Well, it's there's certain software out there that you can use to play a lot of your games that you grew up playing, whether it's on Sony devices, Nintendo devices. Oh boy, big red flag there with them, and all kinds of other ones: Xbox, Game Boy, Atari, whatever you think of. You could play it on your PC, and gosh, I have so many memories, just so much that I'd love to talk about when it comes to emulation.
Oh yeah,
And
sure.
it's not just near to me. Like, I introduced it to Michael as well. It got him through some pretty rough times. It got me through some rough times. And it's a big topic. And I just have so much to talk about, and I don't even know where to begin.
Oh yeah.
I guess for me, how I discovered emulation was I was fresh out of elementary school, and I was at my school's library, and I start hearing Mario 64 noises, and I'm like, someone brought a Nintendo 64 to the fucking library? That's cool. That's sick as shit. I need to go and play some Mario 64. I wonder if they got smashed or something. And I see this person, don't know who the hell he is, and he's sitting there playing Mario 64 on a computer with a keyboard, and I'm sitting there like my brain just took a minute to register, and I'm sitting just thinking, like, how the hell, what is he doing? And I approached him, and I'm a completely introverted guy. I don't usually do that. And I ended up asking him, and, it feels like this guy had all the, it felt like everyone was asking him because he was pretty annoyed that I approached him. I just couldn't help it. I was like, how the hell are you doing that? And he's like, if you got a flash drive, let me put this on there, click it, and you'll play it. And that's how I got the Project 64. It was version 1.6, and that was the first emulator I ever played. I think it was 1.4.
Yep. Man, I have so many good memories with that machine on that old laptop that you gave me with your original flash drive, I believe, all those years ago when you gave me ZSNES and Project 64 together. Oh, the memories.
Yeah, boy, I don't know why I gave you, I think it was just because the laptop that you had was so ancient. The ZSNES was it was like the best SNES simulator I could get running on there. For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, obviously emulators have different names. There's different emulators for everything, and multiple different emulators that practically do the same thing. But basically, it's a program you put on your computer, and then you have to get games legally. Of course, I don't condone piracy. Sometimes it's hard to get it. But there are ways of dumping your old cartridges to your PC that can't really get into. It's a lot depending on your methods. Right. But essentially, you back up your games to your computer, and then you can load those games onto an emulator and play them. And I will admit, as I was a younger lad in my heydays, I kind of sailed the seven seas a little bit. All right, yo ho, the pirate life for me. Everyone's done it. All right,
Yep.
You get on the internet. Everyone's guilty of doing something like that eventually. I'm no different. But essentially, my introduction was through Nintendo 64 emulation, and it blew my mind because I had always wanted to play. Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask on, and I've lost my copy of Majora's Mask for the N64, and I was like really depressed. I could never find it for some reason. Just where I lived, I could never get a hold of Majora's Mask, and lo and behold, look, I can get it for free out on the internet if I look hard enough. Don't tell Nintendo that, but all jokes aside, emulation not just is convenient for me, and like and a big part of my childhood. It was a really good. It was really accessible. Like it was probably that was the best thing about emulation that opened my eyes to, well, kind of talking about what I like to talk about now when it comes to accessibility in gaming, because emulation made a lot of inaccessible games accessible to me personally, especially when it came to the Wii era. There were a lot of Nintendo Wii games that I could not play because I either, I sit close to the TV because I can't see, and I couldn't point that Wii remote at the screen with the sensor bar.
Right.
So I missed out on a lot of older games like Metroid Prime Trilogy. I could never play it. Mario Galaxy, I had trouble playing it because I couldn't point to, shoot star bits or, pull stuff or anything like that. It was the House of the Dead games, like those cool rail shooters or the Resident Evil rail shooters. And yeah, just basically I was able to go through a lot of those games using Dolphin. And I can remember a core memory of about 10 years ago. I was able to go through Metroid Other M. A lot of people really have a lot of negative things to say about that game, but I took the motion controls out and was able to play it with just an Xbox controller. And though it had its issues that, everyone still complains about with the story and everything, I completed it 100% on a normal and hard mode playthrough and had a blast. And
Right.
I never would have been able to do that with the normal Wii remote configuration. Like, it would have been completely inaccessible to me. And I owe a lot to these wizards who put together these emulators, man. Like that's all I can describe them. They're just wizards.
That's a good point. That's a good point that I wanted to make as well, because it opens so many doors for people that have that childhood nostalgia that want to relive that. However, they have their physical limitations that they just can't use those old controllers anymore. For those who have their motor control limitations, like myself, because that's a big one for me personally that I always kind of had to lean on, is just the controller remapping and the ability to kind of mold your controller and whatever you're using to fit your playstyle is just a godsend, because the ability to tailor the game to you is so just, it's very convenient and it opens so many doors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you seen the N64 controller? No hate. Don't anyone who grew up with it. I did too. I love it. I have the NSO controller, but just saying, going back and playing first person shooters on there like GoldenEye or Perfect Dark on the N64 controller, for me, I'm used to it because I grew up with it. But for you, you'd be like, why the hell do I move with my right hand?
Yep.
What is this shit?
You know how much I hate having to use everything that's either on a right trigger or a right stick. It sucks.
Yeah, for you definitely. So the ability to remap controls on emulators is just so good and like so well accessible. I mean, it's wonderful, and I mean, I have so many core memories that I could talk about. Like so many things I could say. Like I gave you that flash drive whenever you were because you had your struggles growing up and didn't really have a lot of friends. So I remember giving you a flash drive and loading it with all of my favorite ROMs.
Yep.
And I gave you Harvest Moon in particular. And I know that Harvest Moon, the original SNES Harvest Moon, is like a core memory for you.
Yes, that to this day possibly my favorite Harvest Moon to ever exist. I went through that entire game on that laptop, and I have so many memories. That flash drive that you gave me had I believe Harvest Moon on it. It had F-Zero on it, and it also had Super Castlevania 4, of which I also pretty much completed alongside Harvest Moon.
Yes. I put like all of my favorite childhood SNES games that I grew up playing um on there for you. And then N64, I think I gave you F-Zero X,
Yes.
obviously Mario 64,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even remember. It's been so long.
That was years ago. That was years and years ago.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I still have that
Um,
laptop to this day too.
oh my goodness, I will have to dust that bad boy out and take a look at it at some point for nostalgia.
Yeah, it's back at the house.
I but yeah, back to emulation, like, and even back to Metroid, like, I remember like a core memory of me is about 10 years ago I went through Other M, and then after that I discovered a fork of the GameCube emulator called Dolphin. It does GameCube and Wii. There's a fork of it called Prime Hack,
Mm-hmm.
specifically for the Metroid Prime. It
Yep.
works with Prime 3 and Trilogy and everything, like 1 and 2. I remember getting Metroid Prime Trilogy, and I went through all of them for the first time with controller. It took away the motion controls and just gave it standard Xbox controls.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first time going through Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, because I played through 1 and 2 before on GameCube, and
Right.
man, absolutely loved it. Like, it is a phenomenal game, and I never would have had the chance to play it had it been stuck on the Wii, unless
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo, decides to remaster it, which I hope they do. But like, Corruption is like an amazing first-person shooter, and like, oh man, I'm so glad I got the chance to play it, and the way that I did get to play it. And a lot of companies don't really think about this. Like, it's something that the big end doesn't really think about, which kind of is sad for me. I felt personally like back in the Wii era, like, I was the biggest Nintendo fan in the world. And when the Wii came out, I kind of felt betrayed, like left behind. Like, every game that I ever wanted to play, if it wasn't Wii Sports, I couldn't play it because I had to sit too close to the TV for the sensor bar to pick up anything. And
Right.
there are workarounds, like, I've had friends where they put it like under desks, or like, they have it to where you can sit at a desk and, you jerry rig something together and, get your thing to work with the sensor bar. But it just wasn't enough for me. I just wasn't able to do it properly, and I missed out on so many Wii games.
That brings up a good point that I was going to make as well with the Wii controls for me growing up, because playing through a couple of my favorite games, there's always those specific Wii games that had their title support only be with the Wii remote and the nunchuck, and I always had to make that sacrifice, because that my dominant side is my left side, and I had to keep
Did you ever say?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had a question. Did you ever switch your hands? Did you ever like just put the nunchuck in your right hand and the Wii remote in your left?
Yeah, like I was gonna say, I had to make that sacrifice based off the game, because I either had to prioritize perfect movement, or I had to prioritize perfect button use, depending on like what the game demanded, because either I couldn't control my character worth a shit with my right hand, or I could control it perfectly, but my inputs would be not what they needed to be for the response time. So I always had to, depending on what I was flying, I would have to make that sacrifice depending on what I wanted to prioritize more for what the title demanded.
Yeah, man. The Wii for me was rough. It was like, a lot of people have a lot of fond memories with the Wii, and like, depending on the game, like there was some games I could play, like Donkey Kong Country Returns. I played through that. That was fine. I didn't mind shaking the Wii remote to make him like DK roll. I completed that game 100% on my Wii. I remember with Sonic and the Secret Rings, played through that. The Black Knight, love that game.
Black Knight was a personal favorite of mine.
A lot of those games get some shit for it. They are pretty clunky to play, but they have soft spots for them. Yeah. Also, Sonic Unleashed on the Wii, but that game lets you use a GameCube controller. Same with Sonic Colors.
That's also a completely different game than everywhere else it's on.
Yeah, like I loved whenever a game had controller support. Like Smash Bros. Brawl was my most played Wii game, obviously, because like Smash Bros. I love the Subspace Emissary, and then the Create a Stage feature. Those are the two modes, because like, I didn't have a lot of friends. I would just was good at. I just wanted to complete all the stickers and everything in that game, and I loved it. That was like my most played Wii game. Also, Xenoblade Chronicles when it came out.
Xenoblade, love Xenoblade.
Because there's a few other ones. I think there was one called Muramasa. It was like a side-scrolling hack and slash beat 'em up.
Right.
That was like one of them. Also, ironically enough, No More Heroes. That game used the Wii remote and nunchuck, but you didn't. It was more of motion inputs and not IR sensors. That game and its sequel were something that I played the hell out of. Those were like the only games that I could technically play IRL on the Wii. Also, well, Kirby's Return to Dreamland was pretty good too. I could play that, no problem.
The Kirby 20th Anniversary Collection probably was my most played on the Wii, because I played the absolute everything out of that. Like Kirby's 20th Anniversary with its soundtrack disc, and I believe you also got a few episodes of the classic Kirby anime from back in the day. Man, I played the English hell out of
dub. That. Oh yeah, I remember that. But yeah, the Wii, the Wii really left me behind with Nintendo, and say what you will about the Wii U, but I feel like the Wii U redeemed itself for me personally. Even though its games were not that, vast and good, I love the Wii U because I was just glad to have a controller back in my hand. But emulation really saved the Wii for me. Emulation also, there's just so much I can say about it. That besides the accessibility, you got your ROM hacking. ROM hacking is just amazing. There's so many different ways you could play your favorite games. People have done all kinds of alterations to games that you would love, like making the game like hard as balls or like completely different. Like there's just a plethora of all kinds of new things you could get into whenever it comes to emulation.
I always love to see the ones that always change the UI to make it either easier to see or have you have your like range of motion back, because I know with a lot of the older Wii titles, it was that sensor bar, let's be real, it was sensitive to hell, and then it was either too specific to control or you had to do too much balancing between the two, which really kind of killed the experience for a lot of people. And there's a lot of stuff that the community's made these days that kind of take that out of the equation and kind of bring it back to its roots of how it was supposed to be, so to speak.
Yeah, I can't recommend Prime Hack enough. Anyone who ever grew up playing Metroid Prime Trilogy and want to play that again, if you have a PC that's capable, I would recommend Prime Hack all day. I would just recommend. I would recommend. There's so much, man. Maybe I'll get maybe at the end of this, whenever I've run out of everything that I really want to say, I could recommend my top emulators for everybody to go download and go nuts. I have so much stories, and I don't know how I would cram them all into one episode here, but like maybe it's a topic I'd love to revisit at some point, but I just want to open the doors and talk about emulation and how much it means to me and how much it has been helpful whenever it comes to making more games accessible to me as a whole. For example, a lot of Game Boy games, like a lot of Game Boy games I couldn't see growing up, like a lot of RPGs on the Game Boy. One in particular that I would love to talk about in the future, Mother 3.
Oh yeah.
Probably one of my favorite RPGs of all time.
That'll definitely have a spotlight episode at some point in the future.
One point when I get this fucker here to play it.
I'll go back through it. Trust me. We've already agreed on it. It'll happen.
You will. Good. Now, but that's a whole another can of worms as it is, because that game never got localized. Nintendo, where's Mother 3? It never got localized, so people came together and localized it for us. So I mean, there's technically a way to play it with your legally obtained copy of the game that you find, that you dump and preserve. You can apply a patch to it and go about your journey for it and experience a damn good RPG. And it only takes like 25 hours.
Right, roughly.
But yeah, that little rant aside, Mother 3 was like a big one. Fire Emblem, I missed out on a lot of the Fire Emblem GBA games because I couldn't see them. I had a Game Boy player back in the day, but you can only get your hands on what you can get your hands on. So there was a
That
lot of games.
that brings back another memory that I would love to bring up as well for me. I grew up on an old SP that was sticker bombed to hell. It was cobalt blue, and I had quite a few games to note that I used to play back in the day. Probably the biggest ones that I can remember being Spyro, either the Pokemon TCG or there's a lot of different ones that's just to go through. But at least from my experience, when you're having an old SP in your hand, is how those old shoulder buttons were just right there behind the hinge of the screen, and they were thin. So you had to be very articulate with your presses. And Lord, when you were getting into some deep stuff in gameplay, and you would flail, and you'd either half press it or it wouldn't register. That was my biggest issue with the old SP, was the triggers, because I just could never use them properly when I needed to.
Right, right. So solution is, you have a nice simulator with a nice controller that fits your hands properly. It makes things a lot easier. I like it. I really do. And
Yeah.
there's a ton of ways to play Game Boy games. Hell, you don't even have to do it on your computer. You could play it on your phone these days, nowadays. Especially if you have an Android, you got more options there. For iPhone users, we just finally got some emulation, and it's sparse, but it's there. But we
Right.
do have it. Can confirm.
Right. And again, it just brings up our universal point that we always say, is that we just want developers, when they're designing their game or their title with their parent company or their parent studio, whoever they're making it with, to have accessibility be the first thing they build, so that they can build their game around that, so that everybody, at the end of the day, once it's released and sent out into the world, that it's something that is welcomed with open arms, and not losing your customers all the time with it.
It's something I can agree on. I understand that not everyone can cater to every specific disability. But like it does suck when you get a game, especially from the big end, where you're really looking forward to playing it, but because of either the hardware that they have or the game itself,
Mm-hmm.
you're unable to enjoy it. Like, back to Metroid for me. Like, huge Metroid fan, and I missed out on two amazing games that, say what you will about Other M. I liked it. That I didn't get the chance to play until I unfortunately had to go away from their hardware to experience it.
Right.
And that sucks. I shouldn't have to do it, but the fact that that option is out there for people is incredible. And you know, the one real big aspect that I also enjoy about this is the preservation aspect.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these companies won't really preserve what they've got with their games. Like, they won't, their games might not even exist in their vaults within the next 20 years, because they're always interested in the newest thing that's coming out. And that's what emulators really help with, preserving your classic childhood memories.
Yeah.
And it's not taken as seriously as it should. And to me, that's kind of sad.
Right.
I wish it were.
Because there's so many
But
old franchises between me and you that we've went through, and either had to completely drop because we just couldn't play it anymore when we were younger, and then
yeah,
being able to just come back and have this wave of nostalgia for our old favorite franchises, and actually being able to go through something legitimately that we weren't able to as kids, is just, it brings back all those memories all at once. And it's just that rewarding experience of finally being able to complete something that has been years in the making.
so what's a good memory for you? Like, what has emulation really brought to the table for you that was, eye-opening, or like, that made you fall in love with using emulators, besides me showing you that flash drive with a bunch of stuff? Because whenever you were growing up, you had slim pickings and you barely had the game. So whenever I would
Yeah.
come visit you, I would have usually bring more ROMs for you, or or
Right.
anything like that.
Probably
So yeah.
probably the biggest thing that always held me back, two things. They're kind of tied to each other. One is always going to be the controller and the controller mapping because of the my difficulty with my fine motor control, um, and how that ties into the difficulty of the game for me on a personal level. Because just having a difficulty be harder because of your controls being inaccessible, and it just seems like there's no difference between difficulty levels when you're either on the easiest or the most difficult, when you don't have a controller set up that works for you naturally, and you're constantly having your limbs go on fire because your muscles just can't keep up with what your body's wanting to do, is a really just big one for me. So being able to do stuff comfortably is probably my main priority when it comes to that. Just having the not have to worry about it, just so I can play what I want to play comfortably and have fun and an enjoyable experience in an enjoyable setting. Another one, aside from just the physical aspect of the control itself, especially when I was younger, going through those games you used to give me on that flash drive, probably would be save stating and the ability to either fast forward or rewind as well.
Right, because maybe you something happened to you and you might not have viewed it as your fault because it's something that you couldn't get around. Like,
Right.
me not being able to see something and then I fail because I didn't see it. Well, I can just hit a button and go back. I can rewind the emulator and go back and then try it again.
Right.
Yeah, it could be seen as cheap or cheating, but man, the way I see it is whenever you have a game, play the game however the heck you want to play the game. If
Right.
if you're not having fun with your game and the game starts becoming more frustrating and everything like that, then move on to something that is more fun to you. Now,
Right.
unless you're playing a game that's designed, like if you're playing a Souls game or whatnot, like if you're getting the context is key. If you're playing a game that's meant to be like soul crushingly hard and you're getting frustrated at it, I'd just say come back later, get
Right.
good and come back later. But like if you are having control issues and everything like that, like the ability to remap and do anything that you need to do is, I think, really important. It's something that I really think that emulators do.
Another really good thing to kind of tie that on a bow as well with controller remapping is going to be the ability to make macros as well.
Oh yeah, being able to assign a button that could either be used to, like, for turbo,
Mm-hmm.
where like you could hold a button down and it will rapidly press a button on your for you.
Mm-hmm.
So like instead of uh so
Chain
like if you're playing,
PPEing.
yeah, so like a good example is I have a Game Boy Advance emulator and it has an A and B button, then it has Turbo A and Turbo B,
Right.
where I'll assign that to like X and Y on my Xbox controller. So I can either hold X for Turbo A or Y for Turbo B, and then it's as if you're mashing the buttons as hard as you can or as fast as you can, but instead of mashing it, you just hold down that button and it does it for you. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
that's a big one for me because of how like delayed my right side is and how the majority of controllers have the majority of stuff on the right side for their buttons and their face
right.
buttons. Just the ability to be able to do that without having to like destroy my entire right arm is just really good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, It is it is definitely something that I adore. I love the ability to remap your controls for people who need that. Some games are perfect the way they are. Sometimes you just got to get that little bit of tweaking to be a little more comfortable. And surprisingly, not a lot of a lot of games do that, but a lot of games actually don't.
Right.
And that's something that emulators fix with the older games for sure.
Mainly toward the old days, yeah.
Um I guess I've talked about my core memories with emulators, but like, what's a core memory for you? Like, what's something that a game that you fell in love with through emulation that you couldn't probably maybe you didn't get the chance to play, or maybe you couldn't play normally.
Man, like I said, my big two from back in the day is always going to be Super Castlevania 4 as well as the original Harvest Moon on the SNES. Those were my highlights of back in the day because I went through those a millennia of times. Other than that, the only ones that I do have a particular soft spot for would be Mario 64 because I played through that a lot. Hell, I still play through that with you to this very day. Matter of fact.
Yeah, there's some cool ways to play that game nowadays, and there's a lot of ROM hacks to that game. A lot of ROM hacks.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So good.
A couple other
So
really big ones that I'm fond of as we go back through the years as well is just going to be MVC2 as well as I remember MVC2 specifically, and then SA 1 and 2, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2.
so Marvel versus Capcom one, and then Sonic. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, hey, those are really good. Like, so you experience those first through emulation.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Later on the line, as we kind of went through the years, yes. As the years went on after we kind of started doing stuff.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. I discovered a lot through emulation. Like, I played, I played a lot of RPGs I would have never even gotten my hands on, like Panzer Dragoon Saga. Oh my god! They want to talk about something obscure that
Mm-hmm.
costs an arm and a leg. You may as well sell your kidney if you want to get a copy of one of those game, one of that that game in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go through that through Sega Saturn emulation, and oh my god, I loved it. I was also able to experience Parasite Eve for the first time through emulation. That's a good horror-based RPG. I got a lot of RPG stories. Like a lot of emulation for me involved a lot of JRPGs that I just didn't get to play
Yeah.
because they were either ass expensive or you could never find them. And
Right.
some of them, like Mother 3, you could never even get here in the West anyway.
Right.
It just opens the doors to a lot of things that you could play. For sure.
Another kind of spotlight when we were talking about JRPGs that we've both went through from the early days. For me, the classic, the one and only Final Fantasy VII.
You experienced that through. I have a fun story about Final Fantasy VII. When I first played that game, I played the original PC release of it, and let me tell you, it was weird because like Cloud's hair, I don't think was blonde. Like it was like a messed up coloration of his hair. I think he was like more redheadish, if I remember correctly. All the music was MIDI-fied.
Right.
It was weird.
You
That was
know,
my first.
as I kind of went through stuff, I've always been a big Fire Emblem fan. I've played every Fire Emblem to date. That's always been a big one for me, and kind of branching off Final Fantasy as well. My personal non 3D Final Fantasy to this day, Final Fantasy 6.
I agree. That's you gained my respect there. 3D Final Fantasy
Mm-hmm.
for our early days would be 9.
Yeah.
9 does is awesome. And, a lot of people give hate to 8. I don't hate 8 as much as I did. I will admit I'm not the biggest fan of 8,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it's a bad game for sure.
8 is
But
definitely not a perfect game, but it is one of the better ones.
absolutely. I played through. It's kind of funny that you say Final Fantasy. That's how I beat. I practically played through 1 through 10 through emulation and beat all of them on a
Right.
computer. Uh, yeah, all through. I didn't do 12. Nope, it was 1 through 10, and obviously 11 is the MMO. But
Another big one for me that I remember I have the music to this game specifically stuck in my head because I believe I think it was I want to say it was 2 or 3 that I had on cartridge growing up. The Sonic Advance series. That music has been stuck in my head to this day.
oh god, yeah, I loved Sonic. So here's the thing. That I was able to go through some of those games through emulation. Like I grew up with Sonic Advance 1, and then I got 3, and I never played 2.
Right.
Like I borrowed it from friends, but I never owned it, and I was able to go through that finally on a GBA emulator like quite some time ago, and I hate that I never grew up with it
Right.
because that game is awesome. I love it.
Another kind of story time that kind of just popped into my brain as we've been talking through these. I remember back I used to be in elementary school, and you know how like back in elementary school days, how like you would be able to earn points going through your classes, and not getting in trouble or anything, and you would eventually have your like electronics day. Lord,
Yeah.
I remember vividly. Matter of fact, I remember I used to bring my little GBASP carrying bag with me, and I used to bring 6 cartridges, and one of those cartridges that everyone always wanted to take from me was Yu-Gi-Oh! The Eternal Duelist Soul, I think it
I
was.
love that game.
Yeah, the original GBA Yu-Gi-Oh game. Cannot sing its praises enough.
My one of my favorite emulation stories that I have that I look back fondly on is when I was in high school. I had my laptop, and being a blind kid, I did everything on a laptop with a screen reader with headphones in. So like, no one really knew what I was doing.
Right.
And I would always sit in the back of the class so I wouldn't disturb anybody. And I remember getting all my work done in English class, like, because I was like really good at English. And I remember I would challenge myself and try and beat Super Castlevania 4. And we have like these large, like
Mm-hmm.
our classes are like really long because we only had 4 periods. And I remember sitting through English class and going through the entirety of Super Castlevania 4
Right.
before the bell rang to leave, and that was like my biggest accomplishment. I couldn't play that game that fast nowadays, but back then I was a freaking whiz at that game. Let me tell you,
Right.
and that was just a cool little memory of going through it on a keyboard, no controller, in the middle of English class.
The another fond memory that I had, kind of going through school as well, is I remember sitting down with a couple of friends one day, and I believe what we kind of went through. I want to say it was half the game. We definitely didn't do one sit session with the entire game, but it was Mario Land 3, I believe, that was on GBA that we went through. I have a lot of fun memories of that as well.
Oh, the what is it? Super Mario Advance 3 or whatever,
Yes,
like one
sorry,
of those.
yes, Mario Advanced, yes.
So yeah, I think Mario Advance 3 was. I don't remember if it was Super Mario World because the names are really retarded on
Yeah,
there. Like they are like Super Mario Advanced, Super Mario Bros 2, and then
right.
there's like Advanced. Like their names are like long and convoluted.
Right.
Um,
I remember specifically there were two cartridges I had growing up that I used to bring in that were combo packs. One was a combo pack for Spyro that I think had Season of Fire and Ice on it together. The other
oh
one
yeah,
the other one that I remember having as well was it was a combo pack between one of the Mario Advance games, and it had the original like Mario Bros on it, like the original Mario, not the Mario we know today.
that was on all the Super Mario. So that was on like a lot of them, like Mario Advance 1, 2, and 3, and even Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. They would always have like a little sub mini game where you could play the original Mario Brothers. And fun fact, that's multiplayer. Like I think it's like 4-player multiplayer too. Like
Right.
uh, I've never played it, but one day I'd love to. And that's possible on an emulator as well. You can do stuff like that.
Definitely.
Um, Well, I mean, when it comes to people who don't know like about emulators, but they like maybe they might be interested. Uh, I'd like to talk about some of the top emulators that you can go download like right now, and they work on your Windows. Some of them work on Android and Linux. If you ever decide to switch, make the switch and break free of your Windows
Right.
chains. But my one that I would absolutely recommend for people is PCSX2, and it is a PS2 emulator. You will need a BIOS file, as far as I know, and all I can say is Google is your friend, or if you have a PS2 laying around, Google is also your friend if you want to dump that.
Right.
And also DuckStation, because it's running the same kind of interface as PCSX2, because
Right.
one of the developers basically works on both.
Mm-hmm.
DuckStation is a PS1 emulator, and it too. I don't think it actually requires a BIOS, as far as I remember, but you can get one to make it work.
Good old Steinzek.
Yes, that guy's a wizard.
Indeed, he is.
For GameCube and Wii, I recommend the Dolphin emulator. This thing is a godsend, and not only it's such a cool emulator because not only does it do GameCube and Wii, it does the Game Boy player connector, and it does the internet adapter for the GameCube. I used it to play Phantasy Star Online for the GameCube.
Yeah,
and it works like wholeheartedly. I played it online and was able to chat and go and do all kinds of cool stuff, and it was incredible.
If anyone like me has fond memories of their childhood going to restaurants like CC's or wherever it was that used to have their own little arcade cabinet corner, Dolphin also has a fun little fork. It's called Triforce, to where you can go to all those old arcade cabinets as well and boot those up and play the old ones there. If we're going down the older route as well, the big one, obviously, that everyone knows is RetroArch.
That one is a little bit more technical savvy, but RetroArch is an emulator front that basically has, it's like a giant umbrella of emulators.
Right.
It has Game Boy, it has TurboGrafx 16, like Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo.
Yep.
It has like every 8-bit,
as well.
Pretty much every 8 and 16-bit system you can think of, in even Sega Saturn, PS1, PS2. Like, it's all in one emulator front. It's a little bit more technical, but it's one that I use quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to play some pure Game Boy Advance and Game Boy, I couldn't recommend MGBA enough. That is one that I would absolutely go for. MGBA on computers is incredible, and if you're on a mobile device, maybe try out something like the Delta emulator on iPhone.
Yes.
And there's also Pizza Boy Advance. Those are really good too. You can get those on your phone as well. And then one big shout out that I would say is PPSSPP.
Oh yeah,
classic. It is a PSP emulator, and it too is on Windows and mobile and Linux. That is a pretty big one that I would honestly give a shout out to as well.
Another really good up and coming one, kind of branching off of PPSSPP as well, would be Vita 3K.
Oh yeah, there is a PS Vita emulator out there for those of you who lost your Vita, or just can't get your Vita fix enough. Honestly, 3DS emulation has been coming along. We thought it was going downhill, but it is doing really good with Azahar, I believe was what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
That one is really cool, and basically, well, I mean, it works with 3DS and new 3DS games, and is incredible. And I guess, really, for those of you who have used emulators, I kind of want to pass it on to any of you guys. I'd love to hear stories about, how people out there discovered emulation for the first time, and, well, what game did it make accessible for you? Like, what is there any games that you were able to play that you couldn't have played on original hardware, or, just give your emulation stories as a whole in general. I'd love to hear them. A lot of people that I've known think that emulation is legally gray, and it's, to an extent, they're right. But I think emulation is a positive thing in the community, especially for preservation and video games as a whole. I think that we would be in a much worse place without emulators. So I'd love to pass it on to you guys, wherever you are. Tell me some emulation stories. I'd love to hear them. And I think that'll wrap it up for this episode. So, as always, stay accessible and have a good day.
Indeed. Stay accessible, everyone. Thank you.